the title for today is Diversity, Inclusion, Oneness, or all of the above, right? So this year, we're working with the theme of spirituality in action. And this month, we're working with the theme itself of promoting diversity and inclusion. And so we're going to be exploring this theme all month long. And we are using this fabulous book written by the wonderful Tracy Brown, who is the Leadership Council chair. This is the book called Stained Glass Spirit. And she's the Leadership Council chair for the organization, Centers for Spiritual Living. So, and she is a wonderful practitioner based out of CSL in Dallas, Texas. And she is an amazing, amazing woman. And we are also going to be doing a book study with the same book on Tuesdays starting April 16th, and then the 23rd, and then the 30th. And she will be joining us for the conversation on the 30th. So I invite you to go to smileamazon.com and pick up her book and begin reading it, and join us for the book discussions that we'll be having this month, later on in the month. Super exciting. Wonderful to have her add her light to the community. And that'll all be on Zoom. And so you can do it from the comfort of your own home, or the comfort of someone else's home, or the comfort of your hotel room if you're out of the country, or wherever you happen to be. You can do it from the comfort of wherever you are, and participate in that. So looking at this theme for the month and looking at the theme for today, so diversity, inclusion, oneness, and all of the above. When we talk about diversity and we talk about inclusion, we talk about oneness, things have this tendency to get, I don't know, confusing, or there seems to be some confusion around it. It's like, well, what is it? What is the difference between diversity, and inclusion and oneness? Isn't it all the same? Or are they different words meaning the same thing? Are they synonyms? The whole bit, right? So there seems to be a little bit of confusion. So that's what we'd like to unpack this morning. Shall we do that this morning? All right. So Tracy Brown shares with us that diversity is simply that. I know that doesn't help, right? So diversity means all the ways that we are different, all the multitude of ways that we are different. And it is simply a neutral thing. Diversity just means the ways that we show up differently. That could be ethnically diverse. It could be racially diverse. It could be age. It could be sexual orientation. It could be gender identification. It could be socioeconomic status. It could be the fact that you're a realtor versus a banker. It could be any number of things. It is all the ways that we as individuals, that we as humanity, as individualized expressions of the divine, it are all the ways that we are different. And so it's not good or bad or anything like that. It's just simply neutral. It just shows up as that we are different. Does that make sense? That it's diversity. That we live in a diverse community, we live in a diverse society. Even if we all looked the same, everybody would be different. There's something unique and individualized about each and every one of us. Just the way our thumbprints are different from each other. There's a diversity in the trees and the life. So she looks at it from a biological perspective. She refers to it as a biological perspective. That we have a diversity of plant life, we have a diversity of animal life, and we celebrate that diversity. We see that, my two dogs are different breeds, or different mixes of breeds, right? We see all the different flowers, we see all the differences, and in nature, we tend to appreciate those differences. We tend to prefer maybe a orange blossom over a rose, or we tend to appreciate both of them, but in different ways. But we appreciate that there's the scent of the orange blossom is different than the scent of the rose. And so we see these, and we look at these, and we appreciate and we value the differences. So diversity in and of itself is not the problem. There is no problem with diversity. Diversity in and of itself is not the problem. The problem is the stories that we tell about diversity. I heard it, Okay, so let's try that again. So the problem is not diversity itself. The problem is the stories that we tell about diversity. What it is that we are creating and perpetuating, perhaps, I'm getting some kind of weird feedback there, that we are creating and perpetuating perhaps negative stereotypes or false ideas or negative ideas. That's where the problem really lies. The problem isn't in the diversity itself, just like, we don't think that, pink roses and purple roses and red roses, that there's a problem with the variety of roses. So what she's saying is that diversity in and of itself is a divine idea. Would you agree? It's a divine idea, because what it really is that we all come from the one source, that we're all but yet we are all individualized expressions of the one source, right? And so how we show up in the world is different than how everybody else shows up in the world. Otherwise, we'd be like the Stepford wives. How boring is that? Right? And so it is that diversity that adds spice and adds flavor to life. And that's something else she was saying, is that there's we appreciate different spices, we appreciate different flavors, so why don't we start doing that with humanity as well? Yeah? And so really what it comes down to is, do we value the diversity? Do we value the differences? Or do we value them or not, for one? And if we value it, or if we don't value it, then are we trying to be separate from it, or are we trying to make it the same? Right? Because there's some folks that would say that, oh no, we don't value it, so we try to categorize people into these little boxes and put them into their little places and their little boxes and try to segment the population and try to segment ourselves and just try to put them off to the side, in which case then we're living in separation, right? And then there's other folks who think, well, that's a really bad thing to do, and it is, but that's a really bad thing to do. So instead, I'm going to see everybody as being the same. And when we see everybody as being the same, then we're also not valuing and honoring the differences, right? We're not celebrating and honoring the differences. And where that brings us to then is inclusion. Inclusion is more of a social construct. Diversity, we're born into it, we're born with it. Each one of us is diverse. There are no two of us in this room alike for a multitude of reasons, but there are no two of us in this room alike. However, when we talk about inclusion, what she talks about with the idea of inclusion is social. It's sociological. How are we socialized? Into what are we socialized? She maintains and she argues that if we are socialized to interact with people who are different from us and to appreciate the differences, then guess what? We will. And if we are socialized to not interact with people that are different from us, if we are socialized to fear them, then we perpetuate the separateness. We continue to perpetuate being separate, right? And so really what inclusion is inclusion is a conscious choice. It takes intentionality, and what we know about intentionality is that which we focus our intention and attention on expands. So with inclusion, it takes intentionality on our part, and it takes consistent practice on our part. And what inclusion then is that it is the recognizing and it is the honoring and it is utilizing the diversity that already exists to then come together as a greater whole, and a greater wholeness and a greater oneness and a greater loving capacity. Yes? So to be inclusive and to look at inclusion, it takes intentionality. It takes consistency and it takes intentionality. It's not just something that happens. It's not just something that is necessarily innate in our behavior, but that we actually get to focus on it and we actually get to practice it. And we get to practice it in deeper and broader and greater ways. So this morning at the morning table at 9 o'clock, we were talking about the idea of radically inclusive and what does it mean to be radically inclusive. And we're going to continue to talk about that specific topic all month long at the morning table. What does it look like to be radically inclusive? What does it mean to be radically inclusive? What is radical? What is inclusive? And how do these two things come together? And where is discernment part of it? And where is safety part of it? And where are our inherent biases part of it? Or not our inherent, where are our unconscious biases part of what inclusivity looks like and how it plays out? And how are we walking it out into the world, not only beyond these walls, but within these walls as well and in our own individual lives? What does it mean if I say that we are a radically inclusive community here at Riverside Center for Spiritual Living, that we're a radically inclusive community? What does that really mean? And so I invite you to ponder that question, because I don't have an answer for you on that one right now. Because the answer, the collective answer, the answer that's wanting to come through is sitting right here in the center of the room. It's sitting right here in the center of each one of you. And it is a conversation that we get to have together as a community of what does that really look like? What does that really mean to be radically inclusive? So I invite you to sit with that. Then the other word that we look at is we look at oneness. And what does oneness really mean? So when she talks about diversity, she looks at it kind of like from a biological perspective, that it's just kind of neutral, it just is. Diversity just is. And she looks at inclusivity or inclusion as a social perspective. And then she looks at oneness, and she defines oneness from a spiritual perspective. So the way she defines oneness is oneness talks about your relationship and my relationship, our individualized relationships with the one, with the divine, with spirit, is how she uses oneness. Oneness describes our relationship with the divine. Because what we affirm here at Centers for Spiritual Living here in this center, what we affirm and what we know is that there's only one life, one power, one presence, one infinite eternal being that is expressing itself in, through, and as each one of us. So therefore, each one of us is the divine made manifest. That spirit, or the creator, and its creation are inseparable, that we are one. There is no separation between the two. That all of life is sacred, that all of life is divine in its multitude of ways that it shows up. So oneness then, as she defines it, is the relationship that I have and the awareness that I have of my own divinity, my own sacred nature, and the relationship that I have with that which I know to be the divine, that which I know to be God. And so oneness describes that relationship. However, oneness does not describe, it cannot be ascribed to the relationship between two people. That's Tracy. Hear that again. Think about it for a second. Oneness is the relationship with the divine, but oneness cannot be used to describe the relationship between two people. Agree, disagree? Interesting.
Agree.
Right? Because if we teach that everything is God and God is all that there is, then aren't I one with you too? But yet she says that that doesn't describe my relationship with you. The way she's using oneness here, she's using oneness as the collective one, the collective consciousness, the collective life. And like when I was saying earlier that all of life, all of creation shows up, that each one of us is a divine impartation and emanation of the one. Each one of us is a divine manifestation of the one. Each one is an individualized experience and expression of the one. Then each one of us is divine, right? So each one of us is the divine made manifest. And we get to practice what that means to be inclusive with one another. Yes? Right? It doesn't mean, so oneness does not mean sameness. And that's where we frequently get confused in Centers for Spiritual Living and New Thought movements, is that we want to say that, oh, but we're all one. Kumbaya, right? And it's true at the ultimate level. Ernest Holmes said at the ultimate level, out of our divine essence, yes, we are all one, but each one of us is an individualized expression of that one. But at the root core, at everything, yes, we are all that. We are one at our divine essence, but we are beautiful, glorious, magnificent, individualized expressions of that one life. Okay? Make sense? So if we are that, then what tends to happen, though, is we tend to want to, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes we'll tend to want to apply oneness and sameness. No, we're all one. We're all the same. We're all human beings. Yeah, that's true. Just like, all 4 dogs at the house we're staying at are our dogs. But they're very individualized, and the cat even more so, right? Yeah, but they're all, we're all individualized. So that's the error in the thinking, is that we all think that we're the same. So unity, when we talk about unity, does not mean uniformity. Unity is not uniformity. So when we're talking about oneness, we're talking about that divine essence and recognizing that divine essence of who we are, truly who we are, and truly what we are, recognizing that divine essence, and then living from that place as we encounter each other. Living in that place as we move about in our daily lives. So if we bring ourselves into a conscious awareness of our oneness with the divine, when we bring ourselves into conscious awareness that we are the power and the presence of love moving in the world, then we can act easier from that place. When we encounter each other, we can act from that place of love. We can act from that place of unity. We can act from that place of oneness, of wholeness. But it doesn't mean that I have to think that Charles is exactly the same as me. Exactly. Right? That's not what oneness or unity means, is that we're the same. We get to operate from that place of love and then go out and interact from that place of love. There's a Hindu fable that talks about, it is a mama tiger, and she's very pregnant, and she hasn't eaten for a very long time. And she's just about ready to give birth, and she comes upon a field, and she encounters a meadow, and she encounters all these goats. And so she jumps to it. She's hungry, and so she jumps to attack the goats, but she's weak, and so all the goats just scatter. They just scatter. And in the process, she dies, but yet she gives birth to her cub. And the goats, being maternal and parental the way they are, they adopt the cub into their herd. And so the cub learns to eat grass and like a goat. And so it grows up thinking that it's a goat, right? And then one day, another male tiger enters the same meadow and jumps in, and all the goats scatter, but the tiger, who's now an adolescent, just stands there and looks at the male tiger and goes, bah. And the male tiger's like, what is this, and who are you? And he's like, I'm a goat. He's like, no, you're a tiger. Look at me. You look like me. You're a tiger. No, I'm a goat. And so he takes the older tiger takes the younger tiger to a pond and has the tiger look into the pond and says, here, look. And then he puts his head over too and says, see, you look like me. You're a tiger. He's like, oh, okay. And so he goes off with the older tiger. He leaves his goat family and he goes off with the older tiger, recognizing that, oh, he's a tiger. And so the tiger takes him back to his lair where he has a fresh antelope or a fresh gazelle that he has recently killed, and he tells the younger tiger, eat. He's like, but no, I'm a vegetarian. Ah. And so the male the tiger basically takes the gazelle and shoves it down his throat. And the adolescent tiger like gags on it, right? Initially he gags on it. And he's like, ugh. And then he swallows. And all of a sudden he feels a different energy moving through his body. And he lets out his first roar. The moral of the story is that we're all tigers. We're all tigers. Some of us are vegetarian tigers, but some of us are vegan tigers, but we're all tigers. Excuse me. We're all tigers. That's who we are, that we're all tigers. And so then the question then becomes is how do we recognize our tigerness? How do we bring forth our tigerness? And then how do we live in a world of goats? How do we live in a world of goats? And the way we live in the world of goats, the way we live in the world of goats is that we recognize that they're actually all tigers too. They just don't know they're tigers yet. So there is that divine nature within us, that oneness within us, that divine nature within us that is calling us to be the fuller expression of who we are. And it's calling us to live that into a greater way in the world. It's calling us to recognize the diversity, celebrate, honor it, and utilize it, if you will, to call forth an even greater expression of life. But it does so because we keep our mind focused that we're really a tiger, that we then get to go out into the world of goats, if you will, and we get to share our tigerness and recognize the tiger in each other. And we get to include, we don't make the goats wrong, we include them. We share with them our tiger ways, and we awaken within them their own tigerness. And that's really what this is about, right? So let's say our focus statement together. We embolden people to live their highest potential through the transformative power of love. Now let's say it like you really mean it. Go for it.
We embolden people to live their highest potential through the transformative power of love.
Hear me roar. There you go. And so it is. So let's have our licensed practitioners and core council members to please stand and surround the sanctuary. So these beloveds are in prayer for this community on a daily basis. And all prayer requests that we receive are held in confidence, but they are prayed and lifted in prayer and lifted in love by these beloveds on a daily basis. And so let's come together in consciousness now. And so if you are comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes at this time. And let's just come together in consciousness, recognizing that there's only one power, one presence, one life, one love, one infinite, eternal being. This one I choose to call God, that goes by many names. This one that I know is the power and the presence. It is love itself made manifest, and it is forever expressing itself in, through, and as all of creation because it is inseparable from creation. It is both creator and created, creator and creation. For love is back of all of it. And this love is a divine intelligence. This love is a divine wisdom. This love is a divine order and a peace and a harmony and a joy that passes all understanding. And I recognize that I am that I am one with it, that I am inseparable from it, because there is only just this one life. And it lives, moves, breathes, and has its being in, through, and as me, and I in it. There could never, ever be any separation between me and the divine. For my life is the life of the divine. I'm an expression and impartation and emanation of this one divine life. And as I know that this is true of me, I know that this is true of all of life, of all of creation, of everyone present, of everyone living, yet to live, and who has already lived, of all life itself, of all sentient being. And we know that animal and mineral are sentient. Everything is the sentient body of the divine, knowing itself and expressing itself in magnificent, glorious, and diverse ways. And so I speak my word here and now for myself and for this community, recognizing that right where we are, radical inclusivity lives. The idea of radical inclusivity, that idea of sharing and living from our oneness, from our unique, essential nature, our source, that common source, showing up uniquely as each one of us, showing up uniquely in a multitude of creative and beautiful and magnificent ways, that we include all of it, all of life, is our divine sibling in this one life, our brother, our sister, our sibling. When we look out and we see the face of our beloveds, we see the face of the beloved. We see the expression of the beloved in everything and everywhere. For truly it is both transcendent and immanent. For it is all in all, and all as all. And so from this moment, I choose to live radically inclusive. I choose to open my heart and open my mind to new ideas, to new people, to new ways of being. And I celebrate it. And I learn and I grow. And as I do this myself, I know that this is also what is happening in our beloved community as well. We open to new ideas, new thoughts, new people, and we grow, and we learn, and we celebrate the differences, recognizing that beneath all of it is a beautiful divine harmony called love, called God. And so I simply give thanks for its divine unfoldment here and now, and I release this word into the law, knowing that it is absolutely done. I simply let it be so, and so it is.